Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome to this section review lecture for this section of the Python Bible, all about functions. We've really covered a lot of stuff in this section, and hopefully you now have a good idea of how functions are used in Python. Just to make sure that it's all stuck in your head, we're going to do a quick recap, and after that I'm going to introduce you to the next section of the course on object-oriented programming. So let's get into our review. The first thing we learned is that functions are a piece of reusable code that performs an action or gives some result. You made your first Python function that simply added together two numbers and returned us a value. You learned that the return keyword is how you return values from functions, and you use this to store the result of a function operation for later. Most importantly, you learned that returning is not the same as printing. Returning a value lets you store that value in a variable to use later, whereas printing just puts text on the screen. You then smashed a coding challenge, and after that we started talking about variable scope. You learned that there are two main types of scope. There's global scope and local scope. Functions create local scopes inside of themselves, and this acts like its own little bubble. You learned that global variables can be viewed anywhere in your program, but local variables can only be seen inside their local scope. This saves us from having to worry about whether all of our variable names are unique all the way through our program. You can reuse variable names as long as they're unique within their own scope, and you won't overwrite any of your data, which is pretty nice. You also learned that when you try to change a global variable from inside a local scope, Python just makes a local variable with the same name. If you want to change the global variable, you need to use the global keyword. However, you also learned that you can change little pieces of global lists and dictionaries from a local scope, although you can't overwrite the whole thing. After that, you learned the difference between a function argument and a function parameter. Parameters are what you define in the function definition, and arguments are what you pass to functions when you call them. You also learn how to give your function parameters default values to give yourself more flexibility when using your functions, and you also learn the difference between positional arguments and keyword arguments. Positional arguments are based on the order that they're entered, and keyword arguments are entered with certain keywords. Name equals Jack or age equals 15, for example. You then learn how to pack and unpack arguments and keyword arguments, or args and quargs, using the star and double star syntax. Finally, we made a game of 3 in a row using all of our skills from the very beginning of the course, and this gave us a good grounding in just how powerful functions are for building real-life programs. So whatever way you look at it, that is a lot of stuff. And if you look back on where you started with this course and where you are now, it's hard to believe you're the same person. Your transformation has been completely and utterly inspirational, so well done to you if you've been following along. But we aren't there yet. Up next, we're going to be talking about how to use Python for object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming, or OOP, is an extremely common programming methodology that allows you to build incredibly powerful programs by just thinking of things in your code as real-life objects. I won't spoil too much here, so I'll see you in the next video.